presenting the unseen gowns of Miss Universe 2023. My name is Dani Walker. Thank you for clicking on the episode. Today's video is sponsored by BetterHelp. If you feel like something has been interfering with your happiness or that you haven't been able to achieve goals that you've set for yourself, BetterHelp might be the solution for you. They can connect you with a therapist who can give you helpful and unbiased advice. Starting therapy can be difficult depending on where you're located, and that's why BetterHelp is so great. You can have sessions via call, text, or video chat, whatever you're most comfortable with and whatever is most convenient for you. To get started, you'll fill out a questionnaire, and in most cases, within 48 hours, you'll be connected with a licensed therapist. So far, over 4 million people have already used BetterHelp to obtain a healthier and happier lifestyle. If you're interested in this or feel it might benefit you, check out www.betterhelp.com/DaniWalker. Clicking the link helps support this channel, and it also gets you 10% off your first month of BetterHelp. Click the description for more information, and once again, thanks so much to BetterHelp for sponsoring this episode. I have so many gowns for you today. This episode may have more gowns than I've ever seen in any other previous episode like this for any other class of Miss Universe, so I'm very excited about that. I do want to note that I might not have included every single gown that you didn't see at the pageant just because I haven't been able to find images or video clips of every single gown, so there may be a couple that I missed. Germany's evening gown to me made a lot of sense for the finals night. We do see a lot of rhinestone sheer gowns that are successful at Miss Universe, so it makes sense in comparison to her preliminary gown, which was also actually, I think, a really beautiful red evening gown. Unfortunately, I don't think it really stood out from the crowd because we have seen similar styles like this in the past. I couldn't find a great video or picture of Dominican Republic's second gown choice, but it looks like she once again went with the chiffon style, and it seems like it's like a gold evening gown. I'm not positive. If you know, let me know in the comments. I don't think this was the best gown for her, but I do prefer it to her preliminary evening gown. It appears that Korea wore a different evening gown for finals night, and I think this was a great choice, but I do feel like she should have actually wore this to the preliminary competition. Iceland had a gown change, and I am just waiting to see Miss Iceland wear something other than a shade of blue or a teal. I really think that they would be more successful because they have so many beautiful title holders, and I just feel like that light blue color that they tend to wear for prelims, it just doesn't really do anything at Miss Universe, and it hasn't really been successful for them. So I would like to see something else. Mexico here decided to wear a gold evening gown. So this is a stunning evening gown. It kind of gives me like the late 90s type of vibes with the sleeves and the shape of the neckline and then the shoulder. And it is really beautiful on her, but it isn't something I think that would have been extremely original that we haven't seen. I feel like sleeved gowns are really tough, and we don't often see them in a top 5. It's interesting. I feel like you can do the sheer metallics all day long if they're strapless or maybe like a thin strap or one sleeve, something like that at Universe. But when it comes to the sleeve styles, we just don't see them as much in those metallics. Denmark had a beautiful finals gown, and I totally understand this choice. I do think it's lovely and it would really shine under the lights, but personally I preferred her preliminary evening gown. I just would have removed the overskirt from it for finals. I feel like Ukraine should have went with this gown for prelims and finals. So a lot of queens pull from the idea of Miss Universe, and we see stars on their gowns or kind of star-like beading for Universe. And so we've seen that. But I've never before seen a gown that has constellations. These are the constellations over Ukraine, and I thought that was such a cool take on this. That made it really special, really unique. Gosh, I wish we would have seen this gown on stage, at least for prelims. I really wish Brazil would have used her finals night gown for preliminaries, even if it meant wearing the same gown from prelims into finals. I really feel this gown would have scored better, it would have made her stand out, and it would have looked more like a Miss Division evening gown. So I was bummed out to see that she didn't wear this gown for preliminaries. I feel like this is such an important lesson that any contestant can learn from, and that's just never save your best gown for finals night because it might not make it to finals. It actually makes more sense to wear your most competitive gown style for a preliminary competition, because if you can't make it past that first cut, the second gown doesn't mean anything anyways. Now, regardless of that, I would still always encourage contestants that if you are going to have a gown change, then to make sure that the gowns are equally as competitive. If you have two dresses, you should be looking at them and thinking, oh my gosh, I really can't choose between the two for finals and prelims. I feel like that's a really good place to be in if you have the option of two gown styles. But if you have two gowns and one of them you feel like is a lot more competitive, then honestly, I would just stick with that one gown for prelims and finals. Now, France, I talked about her prelims gown and it was quite unique, and some of you mentioned that it was a gown that was actually copied or remade, and the original was in green and then she wore it in pink. So that was interesting to see. And for finals, we saw her wearing this white gown, and I couldn't get a good view of it, but as we can see, it's not sheer, but it has some sort of white cape and stoning. I wish I had a better image of this style. I wasn't a huge fan of Costa Rica's preliminary gown. It was sheer and green. If you watch the channel regularly, you know that I talk about green gowns, and it's not that I hate green gowns. I think they're quite beautiful, but it's just that green gowns, unless you're competing at Miss Earth or unless you're a redhead, they don't do particularly well, especially at a national or an international level. I feel like more at state or a local level, you will see green evening gowns win, and it's definitely more common than at the international or national level. So she ended up switching to this neon green gown for finals, and I still don't feel like this would have helped her. I don't think it would have been a change for her gowns that could have pushed her forward. I actually prefer the preliminary gown to this green style. Poland went from a rather simple blue evening gown for prelims to this gorgeous sheer stoned evening gown, and I was like, why didn't she wear this for prelims? Because she is such a beautiful contestant. I think she could have wore this gown for prelims and finals, and a perfect example of that is Miss Universe Colombia, who advanced to the top 5. Same evening gown, beautiful both times. Some people said that Cambodia should have wore her finals night gown for the preliminary competition, and I don't know if I agree with that because I haven't seen the finals night gown under lights, and I actually really did love her preliminary evening gown. It was gold and it was so ornate and unique, and I thought that she carried it so well. So this is a case where I feel like honestly both of these gowns were gorgeous and they were competitive. So she could have kind of wore them to either area of competition. I don't know if this is Myanmar's final gown, but I did find this photo of her online, so I wanted to share it. If you know, let me know. I do feel like it's a really unique style, but I actually really liked her preliminary evening gown. I know it was very, very different, but I think because of that, it stood out. Indonesia, I thought this was a really fun gown. So this is a red style, and then we saw all of this beautiful like gold adornment on the side, so it made it very unique. She wore green for prelims, but I honestly think this red switch would have been great for finals if she had advanced. Let's talk about Argentina. She had a beautiful gown for the finals competition. It was a silver metallic sheer gown, but she looked incredible in this style, and it had some really beautiful contouring lines, and as you can see, it really, really shined under the lights. So I think this was a great option for finals night. I'm not positive if this was an option for Canada, but I just wanted to share it. It looks like she wore this gown after finals night. Maybe it was a style she was considering. I couldn't find a clip of her wearing this one on stage, but I do think it's a really, really beautiful gown, and it does so much to accentuate her shape. I don't think this would have been a bad option for finals, honestly, but I will say that her preliminary gown, the red off the shoulder with the gloves, it really did set a standard for her in terms of gown styling. I couldn't find a great video or picture of Equatorial Guinea's finals gown, but you can see a little split second of it here, and I think that it's beautiful. I think it actually was a smart choice for finals, and I feel like it was a step up from her preliminary evening gown. Vietnam, I wish she would have wore this gown for prelims and finals at that point. I love the attention to detail that they put into these gowns. I love that they name the gowns every year. This one is the Pink Diamond. I think that's lovely. But I have to say that this gown does really remind me of Antonia's gown for finals at Miss Universe Thailand. So that would have been really interesting to see on stage. And I feel like if it did appear during the top 10, then everybody in Thailand would be saying that that was Antonia's gown essentially. I wish I had a full image of Jamaica's evening gown. She wore a beautiful red evening gown at the preliminary competition, but this one was quite unique because it was like an iridescent color. I just wish I could have found an image or a video of the whole thing. I had a conversation with my friend Bessie Basada, and some of you might know him because of his work within the Philippines, and he was on Team PS, so you might be familiar. And I told him I didn't know what USA would be wearing for finals, but I said I would not be surprised if she went with a cobalt blue, a bright blue for finals. And what do you know? This is the gown image that I saw. And the reason that I thought that she went with this is because she wore yellow at Miss USA. She wore red at Miss Universe prelims. And my guess for blue was because of the colors of the Venezuelan flag. I feel like that was so much foresight and it made a lot of sense, especially because in the past, this happened a while ago, Venezuela had sent 3 of their title holders in the color of the Venezuelan flag. They'd sent them to Miss Universe, like one year somebody wore red, another yellow, and another blue. And they did that obviously because it was a reference to the Venezuelan flag. And I was like, you know what? She talks a lot about being Venezuelan American, and it would make so much sense if her finals gown was the final color of the flag. So we did end up seeing that. Malaysia changed her gown, but she went with this sheer beaded rhinestone evening gown. I feel like the gown was okay. It wasn't something for me that was especially unique that we haven't seen before. And if she were to advance to a top 10, I don't think that the gown would have helped advance her to a top 5. Nigeria decided to go with a black evening gown, and there was honestly a lot going on here. I found a little video clip of it as well. And for me, it just would have been too much and a little bit too overwhelming and frankly just harsh for a finals competition for Miss Universe. Slovakia, I was excited to see her gown change. So honestly, I think she should have wore this for the preliminary competition. This is different from what we usually see Slovakia wearing at Miss Universe. So I feel like that could have helped her advance. Ireland for prelims wore a bronzy type gown with her hair down and waved, and I thought that it was okay, but it wasn't blowing my mind. So for finals though, she would have made a big switch. She wore her natural hair and then a white lace gown. Now I'm underwhelmed by this dress. I do feel like it's almost like a mix between pageants and bridal, but I do like the fact that she wore her natural hair. I just feel like she's so beautiful and her face really carries, especially the short hairstyle. So I like this styling, but I still think that there was work to be done with the gown. Mauritius had a really beautiful yellow evening gown, and I think the style of the gown itself is really lovely, but I think the mistake that was made for her specifically is that the mesh in the center of the gown was like a very fair skin tone, and I think that if you are a medium to a deep skin tone, that you really need a mesh if you're gonna do a sheer gown that matches your skin tone. I feel like Paraguay had a better finals option for her evening gown, but I don't feel like this style was incredibly unique, and I don't think it would have been incredibly memorable either. She really would have had to have a performance that carried this gown for finals. This is India's finals gown, and I have to say I was very underwhelmed by this style. In the past, I really felt like they were picking up steam in terms of gown style, and I feel like Harnaz had the best gown styles for Miss Universe, and what do you know it? She won. Now, I feel like the next year that India had also actually a beautiful evening gown for prelims, but I don't feel like it did that much for her shape. And I feel like that's why people did not have a great appreciation of it, because if you actually saw the up close details, it was gorgeous. Now this gown seems to be primarily beaded, and I feel like overall the style is something we've seen a bunch of times, and the beading doesn't do that much under the lights. Nothing is quite like those rhinestones. So I think that the style would have needed a lot more stoning and just something that made it more unique, like a different neckline, a different waistline. I felt like there was something lacking. Namibia wore this beautiful gown, and I feel like this would have been a great choice if she advanced into the top 10. I talked about her preliminary gown and I said I think that gown looked great on her and that she carried it so well, and it wouldn't have been a gown for everyone, but I would still want to change. So glad that she had a different gown option. I thought this one was really, really beautiful and very Miss Universe appropriate. South Africa. So here's my take on South Africa. I actually would have preferred her prelims gown for finals if I look at her prelims and her finals options. But even with that being said, I think that choosing the prelims gown that they went with, that beautiful gold gown, I do feel like it is the stronger gown and it made sense strategically to wear it for prelims. So I totally get the choice, and to me the gold really stands out in comparison to this other gown that had a mixture of like pinks and reds. And I think that the finals gown option was gorgeous, and in fact I love the way that the fabric pooled on the floor around her when she's just standing. I think it's a gorgeous, gorgeous gown, and it would have looked incredible under the lights. But personally, I would have just used that gold gown for prelims and finals if that were the option. Norway switched to a sheer evening gown for finals, and I totally get that change, but I also don't feel like this particular gown style did anything for her. So had she advanced, I don't think the gown would have been helping her. Those are the gowns I was able to find that we didn't see in the top 10 or 5 at Miss Universe. Let me know which one was your favorite and your overall thoughts of these gowns in the comments below, and let me know what you would like to see next now that Miss Universe season has concluded. Thanks for joining me, and be sure to check out all the other recent Miss Universe episodes right up here. I hope to see you soon.